The Whispering Shadows. The small town of Harrow's Glen had always been known for its serene streets and close-knit community, but in the dead of night, when the moon was a silver crescent and the air was thick with the scent of pine, whispers began to weave through the trees. They were faint, barely audible, but they carried a sense of urgency that unsettled the townsfolk. Had heard the whispers herself, she dismissed them as a trick of the wind. But when her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, went missing without a trace, Evelyn's curiosity turned into concern. Mrs. Callahan had been a fixture in the town for decades, known for her vibrant garden and frequent visits to the local library. Her disappearance was out of character. Evelyn knew she had to investigate. Her first stop was Mrs. Callahan's home, a quaint cottage on the outskirts of town. The front door stood ajar, and the living room was eerily silent. Evelyn's flashlight pierced the darkness as she stepped inside. The room was in disarray, furniture overturned, and books scattered. It looked as though someone had searched for something, or had been searching for something. Evelyn's eyes fell on an old photograph lying on the floor. It showed Mrs. Callahan with a man she didn't recognize. He was dressed in an old-fashioned suit, and the background appeared to be a grand estate. The photograph was peculiar. It seemed out of place among the clutter. Determined to find more clues, Evelyn visited the local library, where Mrs. Callahan spent most of her time. The librarian, Mr. Finch, was an elderly man with a sharp mind and a taciturn demeanor. When Evelyn asked him if he had noticed anything unusual about Mrs. Callahan, he hesitated before responding. She'd been coming here more frequently lately, always asking about the old Harrow family. Mr. Finch said she seemed quite obsessed, but she never mentioned why. Intrigued, Evelyn delved into the library's archives. Looking up information on the Harrow family, she discovered that the Harrows were once wealthy landowners, whose estate had burned down under mysterious circumstances over 50 years ago. The fire had been deemed accidental, but rumors persisted about foul play. Evelyn decided to visit the ruins of the Harrow estate, which lay abandoned and overgrown. As she approached, she noticed something odd: fresh footprints in the mud, leading toward the remnants of the main building. Following them, she found a hidden door, partially obscured by ivy. Inside, the air was damp and stale. Evelyn's flashlight revealed a small room, filled with dusty old furniture and documents. Among the papers, she found a ledger detailing the estate's finances and a series of letters, exchanged between the Harrow family and an unknown party. The letters hinted at a secret, but their contents were too cryptic to decipher. Immediately, just then, Evelyn heard a rustling noise behind her. She spun around to find a shadowy figure slipping out of the room. She chased after them, but they vanished into the woods surrounding the estate. Shaken but resolute, Evelyn returned to town. She showed the letters to Mr. Finch, who, upon reading them, grew visibly alarmed. "These letters," he said slowly, "they mention a hidden vault beneath the estate. It's said to contain something of great value, something that people have been searching for." Evelyn's mind raced. The vault could be linked to Mrs. Callahan's disappearance. She decided to investigate further that night, returning to the estate with a determined resolve. As she made her way through the darkened ruins, she heard the whispers again, more pronounced this time, seeming to guide her. The whispers led her back to the hidden room, where she found a loose floorboard. With effort, she pried it open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Descending cautiously, Evelyn reached a small chamber. At its center was an ornate chest. She opened it, revealing a collection of antique jewelry and a leather-bound journal. The journal belonged to the head of the Harrow family and detailed the family's tragic history, including a betrayal that led to the fire. The missing jewelry was to be used as leverage to hide the truth. But what was Mrs. Callahan's role in all of this? Evelyn's answer came when she found another letter tucked inside the journal. It was addressed to Mrs. Callahan, explaining that she was the great-granddaughter of a servant who had been wronged by the Harrow family. The journal was meant to be her inheritance, a tool to expose the truth. Realizing that Mrs. Callahan had been trying to bring the family's dark secrets to light, Evelyn rushed back to town with the journal. She found Mrs. Callahan at her home, safe but shaken. The old woman had been hiding from those who wanted to keep the secrets buried. Evelyn and Mrs. Callahan worked together to reveal the truth. The townsfolk were shocked to learn about the hidden vault and the betrayal that led to the estate's destruction. The Harrow family's reputation was forever tainted, but justice was served. As for Evelyn, she felt a sense of fulfillment. The whispers had been a guide, leading her to uncover the truth and bring closure to a long-buried mystery. Harrow's Glen would never be the same, but it was now a town with a story told and secrets laid bare, thanks to one intrepid journalist's curiosity and determination.